Well, some troubling numbers for President Obama. His job approval rating taking yet another big hit. A new Rasmussen Reports poll shows Americans who strongly approve of the president's job approval stands at just 24%, while 46% say they strongly disapprove. That 22-point gap matches an all-time low in terms of the approval index, as they call it, for the president. This, as congressional candidate, Republican Ben Quayle, takes an incendiary shot at the president that could be a harbinger of things to come.
Barack Obama is the worst president in history. And my generation will inherit a weakened country. Drug cartels in Mexico, tax cartels in D.C. What's happened to America? I love Arizona. I was raised right.
And that was just a sample. Joining me now to talk about it, radio talk show hosts Hugh Hewitt and Leslie Marshall. And Leslie is also a Fox News contributor. Wow, the worst president ever in a campaign ad by our former vice president's son, now a congressional candidate out in Arizona. Hugh, does he overstate the case?
Well, you have to give James Buchanan a certain heads up for splitting the country in two. But what Ben Quayle is giving voice to is what a lot of people are saying privately, that they've never seen a president this irresponsible, this out of touch, this disastrously ignorant of basic economic theory, so indifferent to crises in Iran and North Korea, and so clueless about what Americans are thinking. So I don't think it's going to hurt Ben Quayle in the 3rd Congressional District in Arizona next week. I think he's going to get the nomination. And when he does, I think you'll see a lot of other Republican candidates begin to speak boldly that they long for the days of Jimmy Carter so we would have some spine in the White House.
Leslie, the reason, the Quayle ad is, other than the obvious, the language is pretty shocking from a congressional candidate, but it does give voice to what some people feel if you believe some of the anecdotal evidence we have, and the poll numbers for President Obama are clearly not going in the way the White House would like.
Well, I have to tell you, I do remember the Carter days, and I remember people saying that he was the worst president. I also remember that George W. Bush was the worst president. I think I was one of the people to even say that, Megyn. After 18 months, this guy's the worst president. First of all, give him the 4 years, and if you want to say that, well, then I'll open it to discussion. It's very effective political campaigning and very effective on these numbers and what we're looking at in November. But is it accurate? It's obviously a matter of opinion, and I don't agree with it.
Right. It is a matter of opinion, but the thing that the Democrats need to worry about, Hugh, is apparently more and more people either agree with that sentiment expressed by Ben Quayle or agree somewhat, because the president approval ratings are hovering in the low 40s now. The same Rasmussen poll puts it at 43% overall. 56% disapprove of the job he is doing. And that could affect not only these midterm elections, but also many people are saying now, Hugh, could genuinely make him a one-term president.
Megyn, you don't have to agree with Ben Quayle completely to recognize that he's had a terrible, terrible first term in office. And 9.5% unemployment. The market is shaky again today. He has no plan. There is no plan to turn this economy around and get the engine out of idle. They think it's, we spent $850 billion. That didn't work. Let's come back and spend $26 billion more. It makes no sense. And as a result, when Ben Quayle, or I'm going to be over in Arizona tomorrow campaigning for Paul Gosar, another great Republican, or when Ken Buck wins on Tea Party support last night in Colorado, or Kelly Ayotte wins in New Hampshire, they're being powered by a genuine fear in the country that we are without a person with a clue in the Oval Office. It's not that we dislike President Obama. He seems an eminently likable fellow. He is way in over his head. In fact, I've started to produce a T-shirt, OIIOHH, for Obama is in over his head, and that's the conviction, and that's reflected in those poll numbers.
That's kind of tough to remember, Hugh. You may indeed have to write that down. Leslie, this is obviously criticism from the right? But now we've got some people on the left, as we talked about with Richard Socarides, coming out and saying he hasn't gone far enough. So, but the overall point is, you've got a lot of people unhappy, either the far right or even the medium right, and also the far left. So the question is, how does he turn that around? How does President Obama, if this continues, stay in office as our president? And does it explain the fact that we apparently are going to be seeing a lot less of him in the lead up to these 2010 midterms?
Well, first of all, 2012 is a long way off. Most Americans don't remember what they had for lunch yesterday. Secondly, it's
Salad.
the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid, is the phrase that Americans live by. If the economy turns around, and I know that it will, if unemployment numbers come down, and they will, between now and 2012, Americans are going to feel differently, poll numbers are going to come up, and he will have no problem being reelected for a second term.
I got to ask you both about this, because I do find this interesting, too. As the president approval rating goes down, according to Rasmussen, the media coverage has become more positive, 55% more positive, or 55% of the media coverage has been positive over the past week, despite these approval ratings. Does that tell us anything, Hugh?
It tells us that the media is heavily invested in the Obama as savior narrative, and they're doubling down like a reckless gambler in Las Vegas. So they're going to pour on all these wonderful stories. They're going to ignore important stories. For example, John Lee Anderson's piece in the New Yorker about Iran, Jeffrey Goldberg's piece in the Atlantic about Israel. There are some high-end lefties out there, center-left people in respect, who are beginning to think, my goodness, he's clueless. He doesn't have any idea how to be president. But at the same time, the retail reporters, the AP beat guy, the Reuters gal, they're all looking out there trying to cover their bets on what they said was going to be, you know, the day the oceans would stop rising, the day that our economy would spin around.
Or
they
Leslie,
have to double down.
Is it possible that just over the past week, he did some good things that people liked?
Well, Megyn, I like the common sense approach in that. But I have to say, where is this? As a liberal talk show host in America, and yes, and I have been on the radio and I'm still alive after 23 years, I have to tell you, over 400 of 600 talk stations in America will not carry a liberal such as myself.
They're probably looking at television.
Where are the conservatives, at least in the talk radio world, saying good things about him? But you are right, Megyn. I think they're reporting the facts, which I think is a wonderful thing for journalists to do.
All right, good debate. Thank you always. I appreciate it. Hugh Hewitt, Leslie Marshall, all the best. Well, coming up in about